The Warriors, after winning the championship in 2021 going into this year, were expected to be contenders yet again, and yet at this point in the season, their record is 40-37. They are 10th in offense, which is actually an improvement from last year, but 19th in defense, where they were first last year. But given that this team has the rough structure of what won a championship last year, there has been a debate. Is this team a contender or not? And my answer is, I don't know, but I guess let's talk it through and figure it out. Before I get into today's video, I need to tell you about a huge money savings opportunity you might have with Mint Mobile, this channel's partner. Now, you might have heard of Mint because of this gorgeous man, but let me tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network, and they save you money because they sell direct to you. They cut out the retail stores and the salespeople upcharging you. Another great feature is that Mint makes activation super simple with eSIM cards or physical SIM cards depending on what works for you. All Mint plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, super fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. And I can personally attest that their service is like ridiculously fast. After changing providers, it has been night and day. Mint also works to save you money, keeping track of your data every month and recommending plans to save you money. I have saved a ton by switching to Mint Mobile, and you can too, and maybe even your family can as well if you go with Mint's modern family plan. You can actually save even more by clicking the link in the description, and again, start premium wireless coverage for as low as $15 a month. Thank you to Mint Mobile for partnering with the channel. The Warriors had a lot of expectations going into this season to, if not outright win this year's championships, at the very least certainly compete for it. And yet, with just a few games left on the year, the Dubs are 3 games over 500. However, as I previously mentioned, the bones, the core, the structure of this Golden State Warriors roster is very much the same as what won a championship last year. Obviously, they lost Gary Payton II, who is back again but hasn't been there for most of the years, obviously, as well as Otto Porter Jr., and those were noteworthy losses, but the core players that really were the key contributors are all there, so in theory, should work just as well. No one's gotten notably worse, so doesn't make that much sense that it wouldn't work. And yet here they are, and it doesn't work. To be fair, they have been better post All-Star break, but 11-8 is not standout impressive by any means. And what's really weird about the Dubs, the reason why I say this team makes no sense, is they actually have managed to be good without Curry at times this year. In fact, I'm pretty sure they had a 5-game win streak without Stephen Curry. And then Steph comes back, and then suddenly those players who were working really well are playing terribly, and not even in a way that suggests they're adjusting to Steph's presence, but they're just bad now. That's not Curry's fault. Their road record, of course, is the other big talking point, as it stands out quite substantially, being that they are the 6th seed in the Western Conference, but only 2 teams have a worse away record, and that is the Spurs and the Rockets, the 2 bottom teams in the conference. If you were to just take a look at home games, if that was the only factor here, the Warriors actually look like contenders just as well as anybody else. They have 8 home losses, and only 2 teams have less than that, those teams being the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, and they are tied with the Milwaukee Bucks with 8 as well. So they're winning at home and playing at a contender level at home, but the moment they get any kind of away pressure, they just crumble under it, apparently. It's really weird, and unfortunately, while you could say, hey, at least you're really dominating on the home side of things, that's one positive takeaway, being that they're a lower seed in the conference and probably will be that. More likely than not, the standings will not move them up to the 4th seed. I don't even know if it's even feasible at this point. So they're going to be at a disadvantage in terms of home court every time. So whatever matchup they have, no matter how far they go, they will not have home court advantage. So they're going to have to learn how to win on the road really freaking fast if they're going to manage to do it. Jordan Poole has also been a big problem. He has been much worse this year. His efficiency is down to a noteworthy extent. His defense is much worse. His decision-making is making Warriors fans slowly start to hate him and want their team to bench him in the clutch because he makes poor decisions in crunch time. And then, of course, another factor is Andrew Wiggins. Now, if you want to know what I think about the fact that Wiggins has been missing time for personal reasons, I think it's good and that's how it should be. But if you want a more elaborate discussion around that whole thing, I made a second channel video about it. Maybe Rudy will remember to put a pinned thing or a card in the corner. But if he comes back, that is a huge factor. If Andrew Wiggins is there, I do believe that certainly helps this team look like the contender that they were before. And I would wager that given that the Warriors have been better since the All-Star break, if Wiggins was there, I think they would look notably better. And if they had that to rev up going into this postseason, I would feel a lot better than them. But of course, that's not been the case, and we don't even know if Andrew Wiggins is going to show up for the playoffs. It's up to him. Not going to debate morality of that because I don't think it should be up for debate. But if he chooses not to show up, then that's obviously a huge problem for the Golden State Warriors in terms of them winning a championship. To talk about one bright spot for the Dubs, that has of course been Klay Thompson, who after looking washed up last year has just had his best offensive season and shooting season. While Klay's defense certainly is not what it used to be, not even close really, his offensive production, his three-point volume, all of it is great. He still has the bad shot selection here or there, but Klay Thompson, offensively at least, is Klay Thompson again. And that is a huge difference from what they had last year, where Klay was more or less a neutral most of the time. There would be games where he was a huge positive, games where he was a huge negative. On average, fine. And good to have a guy who can just be fine in a playoff rotation. But of course, you expect better than that from Klay Thompson typically, injuries being the reason why that was the case. But given that Klay is back, at least offensively, you would think that this team would be better. And given that Steph is still Steph, Draymond didn't really get worse. He still has his issues and isn't what he used to be, but he's still what he was for last year's team. Other than Jordan Poole getting worse, everybody else has been fine. I really kind of don't even understand what's wrong with this team. Like, there's definitely the obvious stuff. The defense has not been there. There's the fact that they can't win the away games, but like, for all intents and purposes, on paper, this team should still make sense. It really should, and it just doesn't. It just isn't translating to the extent that it only makes sense that it would. So, can they put it all together in spite of this? A lot of people have argued that Curry, Klay, and Draymond have not lost in the Western Conference playoffs, and that makes sense. It's a solid argument. But also, that magic is far from a guarantee, and eventually that well will dry up. If we're being honest, last year, if there was a big three for the Dubs, it was Curry, Wiggins, and Draymond. Klay is not a part of that. Again, if anything, it should be like a big four now. But either way, just because the precedent exists does not mean it's guaranteed to repeat itself. It might have repeated itself for a long while, but that's not going to go on forever, especially after this team has stumbled their way through the regular season. And that's a big thing for me that I feel like isn't being factored in enough here. When we're talking about a team really putting it together at the last second, that just doesn't really happen. Like, the only example over the last 33 years of NBA history, I'm just going to cut it off of the 90s to make it easy, it would be the Houston Rockets. They were really struggling in the regular season and weren't really ready, and then just went into the first round and figured it out there. It happened, but that's the only time. And speaking of which, even that Houston Rockets team was a 47-win team. There are 5 games left in the year. The Warriors have 40 wins. They're not going to eclipse that. They're not going to even get to it. So if the Warriors did win a championship this year, they would have the worst record to have done it in the modern era. That doesn't bode well for their chances, I would say. So we're going to have to see every issue with this team after the stumbling that we saw all year long just disappear overnight in the playoffs. which is easily the setting in which teams will be tested the most. You expect them to just put it together then. I understand that they have the experience, but I think you're asking for too much in too short of a time. Are the Warriors contenders? I would say that's just too tough of a sell, and I'm gonna lean towards no. Is there a world where they just put it all together? Yes, because as I previously mentioned, it happened with the Rockets in 1995, but you shouldn't bet on a Cinderella run. It's just the odds are not in their favor, for sure. So no, I'm not betting on it, and I'm leaning towards a pretty strong no on whether or not they're really contenders. If Wiggins is there, it makes me feel a lot better about their chances, but I would still probably lean no given the lack of continuity and the fact that they sucked all year. So yeah, shout out to Rudy for editing this video, shout out to Mint for partnering, and that is it. Goodbye.